अभी कुछ महीने पहले ही जेईई में ज्वाइन किया है। आपको हमारी ओर से, हम सबकी ओर से बहुत बहुत बधाई, कांग्रेचुलेशन। और मैं राम सिंह से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि साथी राम सिंह मैम को हमारी ओर से मूवमेंट कर ले। और मैं अब अपने साथी अमर का स्वागत करना चाहूँगा। अमर भाई, आपका आप ही की लाइब्रेरी में स्वागत है। आज के हमारे तीसरे प्रवक्ता अमर भाई, आप सेंटर फॉर पॉलिटिकल स्टडीज में पीएचडी के शोधार्थी हैं और आपकी पीएचडी जमा होने वाली है। सबकी ओर से आपका और मैं रूही से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि रूही अमर भाई को यादगार उपहार समर्पित करें। और हमारे साथ हमारे जेईई परिवार के एक और प्रोफेसर मौजूद हैं, प्रोफेसर कृष्णदास सर।
Thank you.
In your library and
It's absolutely my pleasure.
we are really grateful to you. Thanks for coming. तो आज की वर्कशॉप का आगाज करते हैं। जेएनयू जाना जाता है बड़े बड़े डिस्कशंस के लिए, जेएनयू अपने विचारों के लिए जाना जाता है। 2017 से मैंने जेएनयू को जिया है और मैं जेएनयू की जिंदगी जी रहा हूँ। अब पोजीशन की कुछ समय बाद यहाँ से रुखसत होगी। जेएनयू में विद्यार्थी आता है नया तो कुछ न कुछ सीखता है और यहाँ से सीख करके अपनी जिंदगी में आगे बढ़ता है। हम सभी के अपने अपने अलग अलग नए नए अनुभव हैं। तो मैं इसी कड़ी में सबसे पहले मैं बुलाना चाहूँगा प्रोफेसर विराज कापले सर को। विराज कापले सर गाइडलाइंस, यूनिवर्सिटी गाइडलाइंस और पीडब्ल्यूडी जो आरपीडब्ल्यूडी एक्ट है उसको लेकर के काफ़ी कुछ अपनी बात करते रहे हैं। पहले भी सर को मैंने सुना है, तो मैं चाहूँगा कि सर आए और वर्कशॉप में शुरू करें।
सर भी फॉर्मर जेएनयू अलुमनाई है हमारे बात में।
Generally, an event or a workshop has a particular structure. That structure is basically ensured by the very organized, where the speaker is given some kind of podium and there is an audience with listen to our talk. Right? And that structure also basically ensures, tries to create some kind of gap between the speaker or the resource person and the audience. The resource person is typically understood to be someone who is representing the entity about which he or she is going to talk. So, a workshop is supposed to be, of course, typically informative. So, certain set of information are provided or is elaborated by the speaker, and the speaker is supposed to kind of communicator or a representative of that particular entity. So, for instance, I'm given to understand that I'm supposed to focus today on the UDC guidelines on persons with disability for higher education, or guidelines for persons with disability scheme, right? And by that logic, it's typically understood that I'm going to represent UDC. Now, I would like to see myself and would like to be seen in a slightly different manner. Of course, there is nothing wrong in representing an organization or a body from which we take grants, right, in a simple sense. I think English is fine. क्योंकि मेरे पास जो मटेरियल है वो इंग्लिश में है और ये भी मेरा समझना है कि अगर एक भी इंडिविजुअल है तो हिंदी स्पीकर नहीं है, that should be taken care of. But of course, in the course of the interaction, जैसा तो भी अगर बारी आता है तो हिंदी इंग्लिश में मैं स्विच करूँगा, but my main presentation will remain in English, right? So I was saying that there is this particular way in which a resource person is generally defined, right? That is, so I was saying that there is nothing wrong in an ideal scenario to represent UDC, because after all that's where we are getting our views, right? But the problem is that most of the time the relation between us, including me and including you, and these bodies, governmental bodies, are not reciprocal. And it's not really based on mutual reciprocity. The scenario that unfolds is such that the relationship becomes more oppositional. Maybe खुशी की बात नहीं है, but that is also a fact, because much of it is about the gap between what is there on paper and how it is delivered on ground. तो अगर मैं यहाँ पे वही चीज़ आप सिंपली बताऊंगा जो पेपर में है, तो I won't be doing full justice to the actual situation. Right? I will only be kind of making some kind of a pretension, like some kind of a facade. So I see myself as someone who is actually standing with all of us here, not with UDC in that sense, because I am going to talk about what I experience as a gap between what is there on paper in the guidelines and what actually we face. Right? With the understanding, of course, that a lot has improved. I entered ANU and I had a chat with Sushantji and my friend and colleague Alamelu, Ram, Mukesh, right? And of course there is a feeling that things are much better, a lot has been done, right? But at the same time, if we compare the time that has passed from, let's say, the ninth 5-year plan from which these guidelines kicked in, and today's time, it's almost a time of 28 years. The extent to which things have been done is not really there, right? And I'm also aware of the discrepancy between what one can see here in JNU and what I see in DU colleges, right? And one can even go on talking about colleges in other parts of the country. So, of course, our understanding, because we are academicians and scholars, right? So our horizon has to be, of course, all in one. Of course, we'll talk about our specific situation, but it's also about how, to what extent the kind of benefit that we are getting is really percolating down to the areas where they are needed the most. So with this, so I would define myself as someone who is with the audience here, not as someone who is a resource person in that typical sense, right? And rather than representing UDC, I would be representing all of us in collective. So with this kind of redefinition, if you like, of my role, I can move on to the operative part of my presentation. So this is UDC guide. Of course, there have been many guidelines and schemes for people with disabilities. So we are, of course, narrowing down our focus to higher education. And even in higher education, there have been, for instance, a recent Supreme Court guidelines that Sushant was telling me. But of course, my focus would be on this guidelines for persons with disability schemes. So this scheme, as I said, kicked in it was part of the 9th 5-year plan that started in 1997 and 1997, right? And it was continued in the 10th plan, in the 11th plan, and the 12th 5-year plan. And after that, what happened? The 5-year plans were not renewed. The government took the other way. Right? So this is the problem area that I would like to flag, and I would simply move on to talk about the provisions, right? But I would like to flag this problem. Right? And it's of course part of the broader move that is taking place, the broader ideological move of the state towards more and more towards neoliberal economy, right? And it's discarding its responsibilities for citizens is covered in the welfare model, right? And any meaningful progress for people with disabilities has to be seen along with the welfare model. I don't think that whatever measure will be taken under a neoliberal economy will be incomplete unless a certain degree of welfareism is adopted. Right? We are kind of stuck in a loop, and that's what happened when the 5-year plans were not continued after 12 5-year plans. So what has happened to these provisions that we are going to talk about? They are now hanging in a balance. They are in a state of what we can call suspended animation, language, or they are stuck in a state of limbo, right? That and now that. Yes, UGC has continued these schemes from 2021. The UGC has continued the scheme, this scheme for higher education for persons with special needs, as it is called at EPSN. But then it's continuing, it's extending this scheme every year, like 2021 to 2022, 2021 to 2023, and the latest one is up to March 2024. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think there has been further extension. Okay? So clearly, in all these extensions, one does not know whether the most important thing, that is the fund, the budgetary allocation that will ensure in these 5-year plans, will really give up. क्या हो रहा है कि कन्वीनियंटली एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से वही बोलते कि हमारे पास ऐसा नहीं है, तो उनके पीछे का लॉजिक यही है कि ये है ही नहीं. There are all sorts of provisions, right? But there is no, or there is, I don't know, budgetary allocation. So this is the problem that we are facing, and as a result, what is happening on the ground is partial implementation, or sometimes non-implementation, and more often than not, the non-updation of what has been implemented. So, for instance, in DayalSingh and many other universities and colleges, if you go there for the first time, you will be told that we have a very good resource center, great, right? But then when you spend some time there, when you invest your hard work, then you find that it needs upgrading. That has not happened, right? The devices, the equipments are not really maintained, right? You will learn that certain accessibility measures have been done to improve the navigation of people with disabilities. At certain point of time it was done. So Delhi University is a classic case. An access audit was done in 2007, right? And certain construction measures were taken place. After that, it has all gone to the drain. There are tactile paths, but those tactile paths are broken, right? And on the same tactile paths, there are stalls and improvements. I'm sure many of the scholars have come from that scenario. Right? We all share that. So this is the problem. That's what we are facing there. The provisions are there on paper, and implementation is not there. Right? In fact, I remember my stay in JNU for 3 years, 2005 to 2008, right? And by that time, of course, the scheme had already been there, but still, it's through several representations and lobbying with the administration that we could get a few things started at that time. So I remember the foundation of JNU, we usually can forum. I, along with other people, were part of the early members. I'm sure it's still on and rocking. What? So that's what happens. So ultimately, it boils down to the efforts that we make from ground level. What is important is not what the provisions that are on paper. Right? What is more important is how we kind of push it. So if at all I have to kind of figure out the purpose of this workshop, or students and research scholars have to understand, it is to kind of revise these provisions, revise the key provisions of the scheme, and then see how we can make the administration and authorities accountable so that they are implemented and updated. So coming back to then the provisions themselves, there are, well, in its original form as a part of the 5-year plan, there were 3 sections to this UGC guideline. Teacher preparation in higher education, TEPS. Second is financial teachers preparation in special education, TEPS, that was the first section. Higher education for persons with special needs, TEPS. and financial assistance for visually challenged teachers. So our focus will also be on the second one, HEPS, higher education for persons with special needs, and also terminologies are also problematic, right? And that also reflects the kind of attitude that we are going to see from the talk. So the first one, teacher preparation, I'm just mentioning it in passing, because that's not our main focus, because that's another start story for another day. That has not been continued in the after the final plan was over. Like only HEPSN and visually challenged financial assistance for visually challenged teachers are. So again, that's another start story for another day. So come back to the HEPSN. So HEPSN has certain specific objectives which have been laid down in the scheme. And reading them because it's important for us to revise them. The first is to provide equal educational opportunities to differently abled persons in higher education institutions. Second is to create awareness among the functionaries of higher education about the specific educational needs of differently abled persons. To what extent is this happening? Because when I was having a chat with Shanti, one point that I made is that a workshop like this actually should be organized for staff and administrators and people who are not categorized as disabled. It's they, and I'm using they versus us in this specific context. It's people in general, correct? It's people in general who need to be sensitized about the things on the paper. Right? Maybe not much the people with disability. So please think of organizing some kind of a, I'm sure it's being done, wrong, but think of organizing a workshop like this on regular basis for non-disabled people, so that and administrators, so that they are actually sensitized and made accountable to the implementation. And that's the second objective after all of this scheme, to organize awareness, to equip higher education institutions with the facilities to provide access to differently abled persons. Like, and as a part of that, of course, we have seen resource centers, and we have seen devices, PC, scanner, rail printer. Certain things have happened, right? But again, to what extent they are maintained, upgraded, not just in the JNU, but in other parts of the country. So this is a question that needs to be asked. To provide special devices to higher education institutions that will augment the learning experiences of differently abled persons. To monitor, this is very important, to monitor the implementation of all existing and future legislations and policies which are pertaining to higher education of differently abled persons. Monitoring, like constant monitoring. Provisions to आ गए, अब पहले आ गए थे, उनका monitoring कितना होता है? This is the question. It's laid down on paper, but to what extent it's happening? Of course, nowadays, as a part of anything, but we know that we have this accreditation system, NAAC and NIRF, right? But as what I see generally is that even in those accreditation process, what is basically happening is certain kind of visibility, right? Create certain kind of visibility that things are fine on ground. Right? These accreditation does not go into the do not dig into the substantial level of implementation and or non-implementation of these provisions. And as a result, what happens is that ultimately things remain as they are. Right? And the cumulative actions that these accreditation talk about are detrimental to the institution itself. If there is a threat of stop of fund, if the stoppage of grant, if there is no compliance with certain things. But that's not ultimately it's not the authorities that are being made accountable to these punitive measures. But somewhere there is this threat to the institution itself. So that is not the way to go, I think. Then there are certain conditions that are laid out, and I would like to read a few from them. The university should have enrolled minimum of 10 disabled persons, including persons with visual impairment, hearing impairment, and locomotor disability. So these provisions are based on the 1995 Act. That's again another issue, right? That after the 2016 PWD Act, these provisions have not really been upgraded. There is a comprehensive draft and security guidelines, standards and guidelines that the university has come up in 2022. That is very comprehensive, but the problem with that is it's a standard and guideline. It's not, again, it's not tied with budgetary allocation, and therefore again, they become just a matter of standards. Like colleges can still say, or universities can still say that they don't. It's all fine, but where is the fund? Then there is this particular condition. We would say the most specific. Yeah, but there are two guidelines, one for universities and one for colleges. So there are some differences between the two. Right? So for the colleges, there is no specific numbers for colleges. There are for universities. It says that at least 10 disabled persons should be enrolled in university. Then this objective number 3, which I believe is very important, the university should have constituted an expert committee involving faculty members from university, experts in the field, and differently abled persons themselves. This is an objective, and then when we move on to read the provisions, the first component is establishment of enabling units for differently abled persons. Right? And this is something which has really become kind of something that has not really been taken up. Right? At its initial level, enabling units were formed, right? But as I see in, for instance, in colleges, in many colleges, these units are either just there for the sake of forming them, they are not in a position to contribute, or in some instances they are even being dissolved, and in some instances they are confused with EOC. EOC has, of course, a very valid role to play, right? But at the same time, we have been insisting that the two bodies should not be mixed at the level of initial identification and kind of taking cognizance of the issues for people with disability that have been taken. Right? At the level of implementing them, of course, at the level where there are intersectionality between disability and other marginalized groups, of course, all bodies have to come together. But as long as identifying the initial identification and working out the specific needs, these bodies have to work differently as different bodies, as distinct bodies. And in the course of our activism, we have been insisting that enabling units should be conceived, should be understood as consisting of all disabled stakeholders, students, teachers, and non-teaching staff. That's how it should be conceived. That's the way in which we can do the initial work of specifically identifying the issues, going by the motto, nothing for us without us. Right? And that's something that in many colleges, many institutions is not being followed with this, in this way of the way it should be followed. So it says the special unit which will be coordinated by a faculty member who will be nominated by the head of the institution. He or she will work as honorary coordinator for which a total honorarium of Rs 4,000 per month will be paid. There is also a provision for appointment of an honorary counselor placement officer for the enabling unit from amongst the faculty members of the university, and she will be paid a token honorarium of Rs 300 per month. So I checked the website of JNU, right, and of course there is a section on HEPSN, and it talks about certain things that has done, building ramps, for instance, and certain things that are there in the pipeline, right? But it does not mention whether JNU has an enabling unit or not. Maybe it has. Initially I thought to ring up Ram or Alan or any of my friends and just get myself updated, but then I thought no. Even if it is there, why is it not on the public domain? Why is it not there? Why is it not on the website of the university for everyone to know? Why the coordinators and members details are not there? Right? These are the problems which needs to be accounted for, which needs to be called out. So there is another Rs 4,000 for availing the services of experts. Then there is this 30,000 allocation for contingencies, Rs 40,000 for organizing awareness programs for the universities, for colleges, and that's for universities. And for colleges there is a lump sum. There is a kind of Rs 50,000, not there are no separate allocations, but there is this singular Rs 50,000 allocation for contingencies, experts, and awareness. So there are these budgetary provisions, but again, because of the lapse of the 5-year plan, what we are hearing in the colleges is that it's all fine, but we don't have the money to pay it, we don't have funds to pay the honorarium, we don't have funds to pay contingencies, so on and so on. So that what is really happening, right, is what we need to do. When we look at the role of the unit as envisaged by the scheme, it is provide counseling, issue admissions, to make available various orders concerning fee concessions, exam procedures, reservation policies for the PWDs, etc. Assess, so basically it has the enabling unit has awareness generating function and providing assistance, right, to assess the need for procurement of assistive devices, and very importantly conduct awareness programs for teachers. That's what I was talking about. Other teachers in general. Okay, correcting myself. Teachers in general in the institutions, check employability of participant people, celebrate important days pertaining to the person's participation, like IPM Day or Day, which happens. To what extent? To ensure maintenance of the assistive devices procured by institution and prepare, that's again after the whole question of maintenance and upgradation, and to prepare annual reports with case histories of disabled persons who have been benefited by the scheme. So there is a whole lot of activities that are there for enabling unit, and there is a whole set of budgetary allocation. But if, and as it happens most of the time, enabling unit are not being formed the way it should be formed, right? If the budgetary allocations are not being provided, at least in the way in which it is laid on paper, then all these things would not be delivered on the ground. So the provisions also say, the scheme also says that an expert team appointed by the UTC to evaluate functioning of the enabling unit from time to time. So I don't know whether that is happening. If the formation itself is in a state of limbo, right, then you expect that there will be a team to monitor, assess the functioning of the unit. So another, to move on, the next component of this activity scheme is accessibility. Right? And under this scheme, the universities are expected to address accessibility related issues as per the stipulations of the persons with